London, 1722. In stately streets and bustling markets, all is stability, harmony, unity. But only to the casual observer. Linger a while and you'll find the air hang thick with suspicion. In smoky coffee houses and echoing church halls, whispers pass from man to man, tales of secret messages, of foreign gold, and of a bishop with a dangerous dream. The dramatic return of an outlawed dynasty. This is an age of plots, and in the heart of the establishment, in Parliament, in the Church, loyalty is not always to the king who sits on the throne. Today we open the lost history file on the Atterbury Plot. True, the name may not exactly trip off the tongue like the Gunpowder Plot, but bear with me. It's a compelling tale of duty and deceit, subterfuge and surveillance, and a plan that almost turns back the clock on British history. London stands as a Georgian city now, outwardly stable, confident, and modern. But beneath the surface, resentment festers among those loyal to the old order, the exiled House of Stuart. Behind the outward calm of the new Georgian ascendancy lies a term of conviction and contempt. Jacobite. The word itself traces back to James, Jacobus in Latin, the name of the last legitimate Stuart monarch to rule, James II. A Jacobite is more than just a supporter of the old order. He's a believer in the rightful return of the Stuarts to the throne of Britain. A belief, a dream not yet extinguished. The Jacobites' champion, the so-called pretender to the throne, is James's son and heir, James Francis Edward Stuart, now in exile in Paris. He is an honoured guest of the boy king Louis XV and the French regent, the Duke of Orleans, no allies of Georgian Britain. At the Château de Saint-Germain near Versailles, he resides with his small court. There, the king over the water, as the Jacobites call him, embodies their hopes and their defiance. Look to the Jacobite symbol, the white rose, blooming amidst treason and longing. It's a quiet yet powerful emblem of fallen sovereignty, faithfully worn as a badge on the pretender's birthday, the 10th of June. The historical context to Atterbury's plot is a little complex for the best of us, but let's briefly unpack it anyway. The glorious revolution of 1688 had sealed the fate of the Stuart dynasty, replacing James II with William of Orange and his wife Mary, ruling as joint monarchs. A seismic rejection of the ancient notion of divine right, and a shift towards a monarchy bound by Parliament. It paved the way for the Act of Settlement in 1701. This ensured that only Protestant heirs could ascend the throne, forever barring the Stuarts from returning to power. That law, remarkably, was only repealed in 2015, so if Prince William or one of his heirs were ever to prefer Rome to Canterbury, it wouldn't, in theory, rock the constitutional boat. Mary died childless. After William's reign, it was her sister Anne who took the throne. But Anne's reign was marred by heartbreak. She endured multiple pregnancies, but only one son, Prince William, survived. Tragically, he died at just 11 years old. With no Protestant heir left in Britain, the crown passed, as the Act of Settlement intended, to the House of Hanover. This move deliberately bypassed James II's Catholic son, the exiled pretender. Instead, the chosen Protestant successor was Sophia, Electress of Hanover, the great-granddaughter of James I. But she died just weeks before Anne, so the crown passed to her son, George, a man who barely knew the country he was now to rule. The pro-Hanoverian Whig party would go on to control the government for the next 30 years. George I cuts a strange figure to many of his new subjects. He speaks little English, preferring the clipped German of his native Hanover, and shows more interest in continental politics than in the affairs of his adopted kingdom. At court he is stiff and aloof. To the commoners he seems foreign, distant, even alien. And to Jacobite loyalists he is nothing short of an impostor, a cold Protestant usurper with no rightful claim to the throne, who, in their eyes, should return pronto whence he came. Elsewhere in the kingdom, resistance has already stirred, and how. In 1715, a Jacobite rising in Scotland reaches its climax at the Battle of Sheriff Muir, a rebellion that sees the Pretender himself briefly set foot on home ground again, landing at Peterhead. In 1719, another attempt is made, this time at Glen Shiel, but both uprisings are crushed by Crown forces, as would be the final fateful effort in 1745, ending at Culloden, the last pitched battle ever fought on British soil. Among the ruin of the South Sea bubble, the air in London grows thick with frustration and distrust. The Whig government, blamed for its mishandling of the financial crisis, finds itself more vulnerable than ever, and the king himself is scarcely flavour of the month. For Jacobite conspirators, with a general election set for the autumn of 1722 after 7 long years of pro-Georgian Whig rule, this moment of instability offers a rich chance to reignite the flames of rebellion. In furtive meetings on shadowed street corners, plans begin to hatch. The Atterbury Plot is born, a bold and dangerous bid to overturn the Hanoverian rule that many, Anglicans and Catholics alike, still see as a treasonous overthrow of the legitimate monarchy. And in the midst of it all stands one man, proud, pious, difficult, and dangerous to a king, Francis Atterbury, a bishop whose crozier points not only to Canterbury, but to a court in exile. Francis Atterbury is no ordinary churchman. Born in 1663 to a country parson, he rises fast. At Westminster School, he outshines his peers. At Christ Church, Oxford, he makes his name not with quiet piety, but with the fierce elegance of a man who sees argument as art. In 1713 he becomes Dean of Westminster, the head of the chapter at Westminster Abbey, answerable directly to the monarch. And as Bishop of Rochester, he stands not just at the altar, but at the crossroads of church and state. During Queen Anne's reign, Atterbury is often called to preach before the court. His sermons, bold, emotional, and shot through with high church fervour, move the Queen to tears. But he is always the political animal too, sparring with Whigs in print and in Parliament, wielding his pen like a sword. Atterbury sees the Glorious Revolution not as salvation but as sacrilege, a betrayal of God's order and of the rightful monarchy. For this shepherd-turned-schemer, the Stuarts are not merely a dynasty in exile, they are divinely anointed rulers, unjustly cast aside. The Act of Settlement, in his eyes, is a political crime dressed in legal robes. His loyalty to the Church of England is absolute, but his loyalty to the House of Hanover is a veneer, a cautious concession to a world gone astray. Atterbury is the leader, the plot's guiding spirit, its voice, its conscience and its architect. But he's not alone. Behind him lies a network of allies, scattered across the worlds of court, clergy and exile, busily manoeuvring in the background, each playing a vital part in the conspiracy. Some are seasoned Jacobites, their loyalty unshaken by years of failure. Others are disillusioned Tories, nursing old wounds and buried resentments. A motley crew, but together they form a silent web of rebellion, bound by secrecy, shared grievance, and the growing hope that the Stuart line might soon be restored. Among Atterbury's co-conspirators are two men of very different stations, yet united in purpose. William North, titled Lord North and Grey, is a disaffected nobleman drawn to the romance of Stuart restoration. Once a hero of the Battle of Blenheim, he now serves as the Pretender's Lieutenant General for London and Westminster, with the boldest possible plan, seizing the capital. North is no armchair general. He arranges the secret purchase of over 5,000 muskets, ready to flood the city with arms should the rebellion succeed. Christopher Layer, a brash young lawyer from Norfolk, is ambitious and hungry for action. He counts North among his clients, and together they connive in secret, often at North's home in Epping. Their discussions focus on mustering men, securing funds, and stirring support both at home and abroad. Layer visits the Pretender in Rome, another Stuart haven, and secures a powerful token of endorsement for both himself and the plot. James and his wife Queen Clementina agree to stand in absentia as proxy godparents at the christening of his daughter. The plot thickens. This is no idle drawing-room treason. The plotters envision a swift and decisive coup, one aimed at the very heart of Georgian authority. Their plans, whether feasible or far-fetched, include the capture of the Tower of London, both a symbol of royal power and a key military stronghold. The Bank of England and the Royal Mint are also targeted for takeover, their control deemed essential for both legitimacy and the financing of a restored regime. In hushed tones they speak cryptically of the scheme, raising an army in London, rallying sympathetic officers and opening the gates to a French invasion force landing in the west. George I must be taken into protective custody if he hasn't already fled to Hanover by the autumn. Once London falls, messengers will ride out to rally those pledged to rise in their counties. If all goes to plan, the city will wake to find the Hanoverians gone, and a Stuart prince sailing up the Thames, hailed by cheering crowds as he reclaims his throne. If. As the weeks slip by like minutes, the plot gathers momentum. Lord Norton Grey, using his noble connections, quietly courts disillusioned officers and key figures in London. Layer, ever the firebrand, drifts from tavern to tavern, recruiting with charm and, for the most part, caution. Atterbury, the rebel in robes at the heart of it all, orchestrates from his cloister-turned-command centre. The wheels of rebellion are turning, slow, silent, and dangerous. The plot draws in a wider cast. Among them is John Law, the money man. Brilliant, daring, and controversial, Law is entrusted with managing the rebellion's finances. His expertise promises much, but then an early body blow. His grand venture, the Mississippi scheme, built on speculative trade in French Louisiana, collapses in spectacular fashion. Law is ruined, and with him, one of the plot's most promising avenues for French support, Louis XV's gold, vanishes overnight. James Butler, Duke of Ormond, seasoned soldier and long-time Jacobite, brings military weight from his base in Spain. His brother, Charles Butler, the Earl of Arran, taps deep into Ireland's Catholic aristocracy and is marked to lead Jacobite forces across England and Ireland. In the north, John Erskine, the Earl of Mar, whispers to the loyal and the restless alike, eliciting quiet pledges of support. And in Westminster, Charles Boyle, Earl of Orrery, sharp-tongued and politically astute, maintains a loyalist front even as he sympathises towards the exiled Stuarts. For now these are Janus-faced men, publicly loyal, privately plotting. The Atterbury plot is nourished by a broader cultural climate, one of intellectual ferment and the scars of Stuart exile. Atterbury, deeply connected to literary circles, cultivates his bond with Alexander Pope. Both men, disillusioned with the political order, Pope as a Catholic, Atterbury as a Jacobite, channel their resentment into biting criticism of the status quo. Jonathan Swift, though not directly involved, echoes many of their critiques of the Whig regime. His early works, such as A Tale of a Tub, skewer Whig ideology and reveal his disdain for the political establishment. Meanwhile, Lady Mary Wortley Montagu, sharp-witted and politically savvy, moves deftly through these circles, bridging high society with radical politics and giving voice to issues overlooked by the Hanoverian regime. There's a major international dimension too. The plot stretches far beyond Britain's shores, a spider's web spun through Europe's courts and cabinets. France, long a haven for the exiled Stuarts, remains the natural ally, though its resolve is uncertain. Catholic Spain shows cautious interest. Quiet overtures even reach Sweden and Russia, monarchies with their own motives for unsettling Britain's fragile balance of power. Even in the Italian states, whispers of Stuart sympathy stir among certain clerics and noble houses. To the plotters, this is no mere domestic uprising, but an international reckoning, a coordinated blow against the Protestant settlement, drawing strength from foreign arms and native loyalties alike. Across the Channel, the Irish Brigade, battle-hardened veterans of the French army, stand ready. Loyal to the exiled Stuarts, they wait to become the tip of the Jacobite spear. Chief among them, Dillon's regiment, seasoned, unflinching, its ranks filled with exiled Irishmen, sworn to the cause and poised to strike the moment the signal comes. To the plotters, who know the price of discovery, secrecy and subterfuge are everything. Messages are written in cipher, alphabets scrambled, names veiled in biblical or classical disguise, letters folded with exquisite care to avoid detection. Some are hidden behind paintings, others slipped between the pages of prayer books or sewn into the linings of coats. There's even a canine conspirator, a spaniel named Harlequin, who allegedly carries messages between Jacobite sympathisers. At every turn the line blurs between loyalty and treason, between life and performance. By day the plotters are respectable subjects, by night rebels. As for the forces arrayed against them, many would say it's a hopeless mismatch. The plotters face the entrenched might of the Whig government, its grip on power strengthened after the Glorious Revolution. The Whigs are the champions of order, Protestant ascendancy, and, above all, the Hanoverian succession, to be challenged only by the brave or the delusional. At the heart of this political machine stands Robert Walpole, the First Lord of the Treasury, shrewd, calculating, and, after Lord Sunderland's death in 1722, the undisputed architect of British power. His rise is no accident. Walpole consolidates his influence with quiet stealth, swiftly filling the vacuum Sunderland leaves behind. He commands loyal support from fellow government ministers Townshend, Lansdowne and Cowper. As the Jacobite conspiracy unfolds, Walpole constructs a vast state apparatus to root it out. At its centre lies a secret department within the post office, a covert arm of the government tasked with monitoring every letter, parcel and communication crossing the nation's borders. What was once a simple public service becomes a powerful tool of espionage, intercepting any correspondence that might hint at treasonous plots or foreign sympathies. Like the plot itself, Walpole's influence spreads far beyond British shores. His network stretches through France, Spain and Italy, burrowing deep into the heart of foreign postal systems. Postmasters, once trusted civil servants, are transformed into covert agents of the British state, their loyalty secured, their eyes trained to scrutinise foreign correspondence for any hint of Jacobite support. Trusted spies like John Mackay gather intelligence in the Low Countries and elsewhere. Walpole isn't simply reactive. He strives to crush the Jacobites' every move before they even make it. The system he constructs, secret departments, spies abroad, intercepted letters, evolves into a well-oiled surveillance machine. At its core is another bishop, but this time an establishment man, Edward Willis, the chief decipherer, whose evidence will prove crucial in court. When the network's existence is revealed, Whigs defend it as a vital safeguard for the realm. But to Tory critics it reeks of overreach, the creeping shadow of tyranny. Whatever the truth, it works. The Jacobite web, spun with such care, begins to unravel, and fast. It starts with whispers, a stray remark to the wrong ear, a misread signal between foreign agents. In a double-crossing gesture of rapprochement, the Duke of Orléans allegedly tips off Walpole. One letter from Atterbury's secretary hints at our friend in Rome, the pretender. Others mention a great physician poised to heal the kingdom's ills, covert, oblique, and unmistakably treasonous. One by one the dominoes begin to fall. Christopher Layer finds himself trapped by the secret messages he once sent across the seas, by the uncovering of James and Clementina's godparent gesture, and, plus ça change, by pillow talk with a disloyal, loose-tongued mistress. The authorities move swiftly. Arrests are made under the cover of night. Atterbury, isolated and aghast, can only watch as his carefully laid plans crumble. The dream of a Stuart restoration, once so close, melts away as hopes turn to fear, and fear to political and personal ruin. As the plot unravels and habeas corpus is suspended, the final act plays out in the courtroom. Tellingly, Atterbury is never tried in a criminal court. Instead, the government moves against him through a Bill of Pains and Penalties in Parliament, a legal device that punishes without trial. His hearing, held in the grand chambers of Westminster Hall, becomes a theatrical spectacle. A man of sharp wit and eloquence, Atterbury faces the court not as a cornered conspirator, but as a skilled orator, wielding his words like weapons. His testimony is a command performance, a masterful blend of defiance, despair, and subtle appeals to the court's better judgment. Every word is carefully chosen to leave a lasting impression. Atterbury is insistent. Though his actions may be treasonous, they were those of a man fighting for what is right. I am the last man who has suffered for this cause. I pray God may open your eyes that you may see the right, he thunders. My lords, I am innocent. I call God and the world to witness that I am. But there is no applause from this po-faced gallery. Sir John Pratt, the presiding judge, is a figure of cold authority. With his stern demeanour and his unwavering commitment to the law, Pratt ensures that Atterbury's fate is sealed. For him, the charge of treason is as clear as the ink on the court papers, and despite Atterbury's impassioned pleas, the outcome is inevitable. Atterbury is stripped of his public offices and exiled. From mitre to martyr, from holy see to obscurity. Grief-stricken by the recent death of his wife Catherine, he carried a miniature of her with him into exile, and wrote that his grief never left his side. Christopher Layer, after a brief and desperate escape from house arrest through a second-floor window, is recaptured in St George's Fields, and put on trial at the Court of King's Bench, which handles treason cases. Lacking the influential connections that shielded Atterbury, he finds himself in an even more perilous position, expendable and without hope. Atterbury's trial is a political spectacle, a contest of wits and rhetoric. Layer's, by contrast, is a cold, mechanical affair with a predetermined outcome. Yet, in its own way, Layer's appearance in court is equally memorable. Despite being gravely ill, he stands firm in the dock, his shackles temporarily removed at Judge Pratt's direction, unflinching in his loyalty to his fellow plotters. His conviction is absolute, never betraying, never renouncing the cause. But court law cares not for his principles, only for his actions. The verdict is guilty, the sentence death, executed in the most savage form the state can devise. He is to be hanged, drawn and quartered, a punishment designed not merely to end his life, but to obliterate it. Several stays of execution are issued, but only to extract further information from him. They don't work. By comparison, Atterbury got off lightly. Two-tier justice, Georgian style. Layer's severed head was placed on a pike, raised high on the roof of Temple Bar, a grisly symbol of his treason, a warning to all who defied the crown. Yet, in an eerie twist, when the head blew off, it was sold to Richard Rawlinson, an antiquary and covert supporter of the exiled Stuarts. Rawlinson ordered that when his own time came, he would be buried with Layer's head firmly in his right hand, a final defiant if somewhat bizarre gesture against those who had claimed Leia's life. What of the other conspirator's fate? Tipped off about his impending arrest, Lord Norton Grey attempts a daring midnight escape by smuggler's boat bound for France. He makes it as far as the Isle of Wight before being seized and brought to the Tower. Though interrogated, North is never formally tried. Instead, he retires into exile on the continent, where, to Atterbury's dismay, he converts to Catholicism. He later takes command of Spanish troops in Barcelona, a far cry from those 5,000 muskets and the Stuart restoration he had once hoped and schemed for. In Britain, his reputation remained stained, a peer of the realm who had dreamed of insurrection. The Earl of Orrery, once favoured by George I, now finds himself imprisoned in the Tower for 6 months, only to be released after an inquiry. Insufficient evidence or friends in high places? The Earl of Arran is exiled after his deep Jacobite connections are uncovered. Several other lower-ranking conspirators are arrested, imprisoned and eventually released. In contrast, the Earl of Mar is exposed by Atterbury as a double agent, and at Atterbury's behest he is abandoned by the Jacobite court in exile. Such, for all of them, is the sobering transience of honour and a good name. The uncovering of the Atterbury Plot is a triumph for Walpole, cementing his dominance within the Whig government and his relationship with King George I. The exposure of the conspiracy, followed by the highly publicised trials, proves his ability to maintain stability in the kingdom. There's a crackdown on Papists, the enemy within. In the 1722 general election, Walpole deftly exploits the scandal to extend the Whig supremacy over the Tories, portraying himself as the guardian of national security. His critics, in a derisive twist, coin the term Prime Minister, suggesting he wields too much power. The term sticks, not as an insult, but as an unofficial title he would hold for an astonishing 21 years, reigning as Britain's political supremo. As for Atterbury, what is a bishop without a pulpit, a kingdom without its true king? In his mind, both will one day be restored. Until then, across the water, he prays and waits. And he never stops being English in spirit, insisting on wearing his full English clerical robes, a bishop in exile who still gives the impression that the kingdom has merely mislaid him. It is said that Voltaire visited Atterbury during his exile in Paris and remarked that his spirit was too proud to be broken by misfortune. Whether or not the meeting truly happened, the story reflects the air of defiant dignity that clung to Atterbury, even in disgrace. But in truth, exile offers little sanctuary. He grows disillusioned with the Catholicism of the court in exile in Paris, enough to leave it behind. He moves to Montpellier, but then has the heart-rending task of reading the last rites to his daughter, Mary, who dies after enduring an arduous journey to be by his side. 2 years later, in 1732, Atterbury himself dies in exile. He is buried in Westminster Abbey, but not among the great statesmen and power brokers he once defied. In accordance with his final wishes, his grave lies far from them, in an unremarkable corner of the abbey near the shop and the ticket office, a place often passed by and, like the plot he led, often overlooked. The authorities insisted on a quiet, private burial and denied him the epitaph he had composed, a bitter diatribe against those who had brought him down. The Atterbury Plot will never be remembered in the same breath as the Gunpowder Plot, and rightly so. There were no barrels of gunpowder, no dramatic plans to blow up Parliament and assassinate the King, no Guy Fawkes to keep the memory alive. Besides, no nation, let alone one called the United Kingdom, is eager to preserve too many tales of treason from within. Yet it deserves to be remembered, for it marks a telling moment in Britain's long reckoning with loyalty, legitimacy, and the right to resist. It's tempting to dismiss the plot as doomed, A fantasy spun by ageing loyalists and desperate adventurers. Maybe it was. But imagine just for a moment French ships landing on the southern coast, riots in London, Jacobite banners rising in the north, a stunned Parliament caught off guard. Would a Stuart king have been accepted? Or would the nation have plunged into civil war? We can never know. But the fact that Parliament moved so quickly and with such severity tells us they feared it could have happened. To most historians, Georgian Britain is a byword for peace, stability and serene progress. Yet a quieter view lingers, that in the infancy of this newly forged realm, the Atterbury Plot, and Walpole's ruthless response to it, revealed a different truth, that Hanoverian harmony was, at best, a work in progress, at worst, a carefully staged Georgian facade. And at the centre of that illusion stood a man of God and a Jacobite, the Rochester rebel with a cause, Bishop Francis Atterbury. Patriot or fanatic, principled loyalist or dangerous traitor, perhaps the truth, as so often in history, lies in the uncomfortable space between.